Good afternoon. We're here to advise the public that State College Police made an arrest early this morning, assisted by the Pennsylvania State Police, in a 26-year-old cold case. A Scott R. Williams of Reedsville, Pennsylvania, was arrested this morning on charges of rape, robbery, and aggravated assault. This goes back to May 13th, 1995, in the early morning hours. A young woman was beaten and raped along Pew Street in State College, Pennsylvania. She was found on the street by a passerby. She was naked from the waist down and covered in blood. The victim suffered fractures to her skull, her face, and jaw. She was life-flighted to Geisinger Medical Center. A crime scene was discovered nearby where the victim was found in the street. The State College Police Department was able to develop a DNA profile of the alleged perpetrator, and that profile was filed with the FBI in their databases. In 2000, State College Police Detective Thomas N. Jordan drafted an arrest warrant for the arrest of a John Doe. He was identified as the individual with the DNA profile that had been developed. Investigator Jordan took that warrant to then District Attorney Ray Greekar, who approved it for filing. It was filed prior to the expiration of the 5-year statute of limitations. Back in 1995, it was pretty common for crimes of violence where there was nothing other than physical evidence to identify a perpetrator to go unsolved and have the statute of limitations expire after that 5-year period. Investigator Jordan had read about this being used in a Milwaukee case. He and Mr. Greekar were the first ones to file one on the Eastern Seaboard. The filing of that John Doe criminal complaint got picked up by the AP and the national press, and Detective Jordan began to receive numerous calls from SBU units across the country and across the Eastern Seaboard, which was used in countless cases since then. His John Doe warrant that was filed in this case was used as an example in other SBU units. We're happy to report that after 26 years, the alleged perpetrator has been identified and has been arrested and is currently in custody. Deputy District Attorney Sean McGraw is the individual who, from our office, has worked on this extensively. It is a combined effort of multiple police agencies and many investigators over the course of 26 years, and I'll leave that to Mr. McGraw to detail the identification and arrest that occurred.
Good afternoon. As Mr. Cantorna advised earlier this morning, the State College Police Department, led by Detectives Steve Bozak and Nicole Eckley, brought a man named Scott Williams to this court to face charges of rape, aggravated assault, and robbery. Without the exemplary efforts of Detective Bozak and Detective Eckley, this case would likely have never been solved. I would like to tell you about their work. Back in 2018, I received a call from Detective Bozak. He told me that he learned about the forensic DNA investigative methods, and specifically the genealogical DNA methods that had led to the arrest and prosecution of the man infamously known as the Golden State Killer in California. He asked for the support of the District Attorney's Office in applying those methods to some old cases, so-called cold cases, because the investigations to date had failed to identify the perpetrator, and we of course said that we would do everything in our power to support him. Assisted by Detective Eckley, Detective Bozak began a review of cases where DNA had been collected but had failed to identify a suspect. Some of you may recall that at about this time last year, Detective Bozak and Detective Eckley filed charges against a man who had forcibly raped 4 women in State College from 2010 through 2017. That man was identified through genealogical DNA. The defendant arrested this morning was similarly identified through genealogical DNA. Both investigations required tedious, exacting work. The initial step was to upload the crime scene DNA into a centralized database. Analyses performed on that database create a profile telling us the probable race and ethnicity of the suspect. Then further analyses identify people likely to be related to the suspect. Often they are distant relatives. It is at this stage that the real work of the detectives begins. They must go out and interview people whose familial DNA shows a connection to the suspect. Based on those interviews and further DNA analysis, Detective Bozak and Detective Eckley quite literally begin reconstructing the family trees that led them to where we are today. Detective Bozak and Detective Eckley displayed incredible commitment, tenacity, and judgment in their pursuit of justice in these cases. I hasten to add, however, that their work could not have been done without the extraordinary cooperation of many citizens across this Commonwealth who voluntarily gave information as well as their own DNA in the pursuit of the men who committed the crimes in 1995 and 2010 through 2017. The crimes for which the defendant was arrested today occurred well over 26 years ago. 26 years of no closure, no resolution for both the victim and this community. The District Attorney's Office extends its deepest gratitude to Detective Steve Bozak, Detective Nicole Eckley, State College Police Department, the Pennsylvania State Police who assisted in the arrest, and the many Pennsylvanians who were instrumental in bringing these defendants to justice. Our investigation does remain ongoing, and we encourage anyone with information to contact the State College Police Department.